7 years after they vanished, a satellite beacon suddenly screamed for help from the middle of the ocean. 400 miles offshore, 4,000 feet of water below. Impossible. Before we dive deeper into this mystery, hit that like button and subscribe if stories like this pull you in. Drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. It's always incredible seeing how far these stories reach. August 15th, 2012, Louisiana marshlands. The humidity hangs like a wet blanket. Preston Keegan checks his phone again. No signal. No surprise. His kids are 2 hours late. Odelia, 21. Tanner, 18. They're supposed to be here by 8 a.m. It's past 10 now. The water is still, too still. Just cypress knees breaking the surface and the occasional mullet jumping. This trip was supposed to be a celebration. Odelia spent 6 months recovering from knee surgery, confined, restless. She and Tanner planned this overnight kayaking trip for weeks, a return to mobility, a reclaiming of freedom. Preston remembers the day before perfectly, August 14th. He paddled out with them for the launch. Within an hour, they'd caught largemouth bass. Both of them grinning like they'd won the lottery. He took a photo. Has to document the moment. Tanner in his royal blue shirt, light blue cap turned backward. Odelia, blonde hair catching sun, hot pink top bright against the water. They're holding up their fish, the quintessential summer shot. Around 4 p.m., Preston said goodbye. They had camping gear, supplies for a campfire dinner, and critically, a satellite emergency beacon. Standard precaution for remote trips. The plan was simple. They'd paddle to their favorite campsite, cook the fish, sleep under stars, meet him at the boat launch by morning. Now, silence. Preston can't wait anymore. He unloads his kayak, pushes off into the murky water. The paddle to their campsite takes 40 minutes. Every stroke tightens the knot in his stomach. He rounds the final bend. The tent is there, standing slightly askew. The fire pit is cold, stone cold, hasn't been used. Some gear scattered around, cooler, tackle box, dry bag with clothes. But the kids are gone, and both kayaks are missing. Here's where it gets strange. Why would they leave camp in the middle of the night? Why take the kayaks, but leave everything else behind? Preston circles the area, calls their names until his voice cracks. The marsh swallows the sound, gives nothing back. He drives until he finds cell signal, calls the sheriff. Missing persons report filed, Odelia and Tanner Keegan. The initial theory is tragically simple, accidental drowning. The response is massive. Local law enforcement, Coast Guard, Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries, volunteers. The search zone is immense. Miles of interconnected bayous, canals, lakes, dense wetlands. The water is murky, visibility measured in inches, airboats skim the surface, helicopters crisscross overhead. Sonar. Equipment probes the depths. For 48 hours, they search between the campsite and the boat launch. Preston is relentless. He knows these waters. His kids were strong swimmers, cautious kayakers. The theory doesn't fit. If a kayak capsizes, gear floats. Something always breaks free. They're finding nothing. And that's when everything changes. Day 3, August 18th. A wildlife airboat locates Tanner's kayak, drifting in a main waterway. Several miles from camp, the kayak is capsized. Minor scuff marks on the hull. Classic signature of a boating accident. Dive teams arrive. The operation shifts from rescue to recovery. But hours later, a second discovery that makes no sense. Odelia's kayak is found 5 miles away from Tanner's, near the entrance of a restricted industrial canal. Unlike Tanner's, her kayak is upright, undamaged, deliberately pulled close to the bank near a service road. Wait, 5 miles apart? If they'd been together during an accident, the kayaks should be near each other. Same currents, same winds. This suggests separation, voluntary or forced. And the location of Odelia's kayak is wrong. All wrong. The Industrial Canal Services Zier Industrial Solutions, a massive logistics facility, private, heavily secured. Not a place recreational kayakers go, especially not at night. The facility operates 24 hours, supporting offshore oil rigs, managing maritime traffic. The discovery shifts everything. This isn't a simple accident anymore. Detectives arrive at the Zier facility expecting cooperation. They get stonewalling. Security logs for that night? Corrupted during a system update? CCTV footage of the canal entrance? Cameras malfunctioning, pointed the wrong direction. Every request met with polished corporate resistance. The company's lawyers block employee interviews. The few that happen yield nothing. Rehearsed answers, uniform responses. Saw nothing unusual. The investigation hits a wall. The physical evidence points to the facility, but the corporate infrastructure blocks access. Without probable cause, they can't force it. This part still gives me chills. Investigators pivot. They need an alternative theory. Attention turns to local fishing disputes, violent jurisdictional conflicts between commercial operations. Maybe Odilia and Tanner paddled into the wrong territory, mistaken for rivals. Witnesses to illegal activity. For weeks, detectives pursue this angle. Interview fishing crews. Scrutinize operations. But no connection emerges. Alibis check out. No physical evidence. The fishing lead evaporates. Months pass. The massive search operation scales back. The physical trail erased by Louisiana weather and tides. The case goes cold. Preston Keegan refuses to accept it. While the official investigation withers, his obsession grows. He's convinced the answers are behind the gates of Zier Industrial Solutions. He tells the sheriff's office repeatedly. Demands. They investigate the corrupted logs, the stonewalling. They dismiss him. The desperate attempts of a grieving father. 7 years pass. By September 2019, Odilia and Tanner Keegan are a local tragedy, a painful memory, occasionally resurrected by anniversary news segments, otherwise forgotten. Preston continues his solitary vigil, but the world has moved on. And here's the detail that changes everything. September 10th, 2019, early morning hours. An automated alert flares at the GEOS International Emergency Response Coordination Center. A satellite distress signal. SOS transmission. The coordinates are analyzed. The location is startling, deep in the Gulf of Mexico, hundreds of miles offshore, open ocean, water depth 4,000 feet. The alert goes to Coast Guard Sector New Orleans immediately. Simultaneously, analysts work to identify the signal source. Every satellite beacon has a unique identifier, a hex ID registered to the owner. They cross-reference the hex ID. The match is instantaneous. The signal is coming from the Keegan family's satellite messenger, the device Odilia and Tanner carried 7 years ago. Nobody saw this coming. How does a device lost in shallow Louisiana marshes in 2012 suddenly activate in the deep ocean in 2019? It defies logic. The Coast Guard responds urgently. An active SOS demands action. A cutter and search aircraft are dispatched to the coordinates. The aircraft arrives first. Clear weather, calm seas. They find nothing. The Gulf is empty. No vessel, no debris, no life raft. The cutter arrives hours later. Detailed search pattern. Specialized equipment. Again, nothing. The analysts review transmission data. The signal wasn't continuous. It activated suddenly, transmitted for 90 seconds, then went silent. The abrupt cessation is as mysterious as the activation. The ghost signal sends shock waves through the cold case unit. Physical evidence has resurfaced in an impossible location. The accident theory is dead, definitively. Preston Keegan was right all along. Something deliberate happened to his children. But I haven't told you the worst part yet. The investigation reignites. Federal agencies join. FBI, Coast Guard Investigative Service, Maritime Forensic Units. The question isn't what happened in the bayou anymore. It's how the evidence ended up in the deep ocean 7 years later. Federal agents arrive at Preston's home. They expect a grieving father clinging to theories. They find something else entirely. A shadow investigation more detailed than the original case file. Preston leads them to a back room. Operation Center. Walls covered with maps, nautical charts, long-range photos of the Zier facility, binders, meticulously organized, cross-referenced. 7 years of surveillance. Preston has been monitoring Zier Industrial Solutions. Thousands of hours documenting maritime traffic, late-night movements of vessels, arriving and departing under darkness. Between midnight and 4 a.m., he's logged dates, times, vessel profiles, names. These vessels deviate from established shipping lanes, their movements designed to avoid scrutiny. Transponders sometimes deactivated. Major violation of maritime regulations. Preston is convinced Zier is a nexus for illicit activities, smuggling, drugs, weapons. His children stumbled onto the operation, were silenced. The investigators are stunned. What local authorities dismissed as obsession is now a critical data set. 7 years of suspicious activity originating from exactly where the evidence suggested they should look in 2012. Preston also describes the resistance. How he repeatedly tried to present findings to the sheriff's office, aggressively dismissed. Zier security harassed him, threatened trespassing charges. But the most disturbing aspect, local law enforcement behavior. Deputy Myron Blevins was particularly hostile, instrumental in dismissing the Zier connection, pushing the accident theory, protective of Zier interests. Preston recounts a specific incident in 2014. He obtained photos of a suspicious vessel at Zier, late night, loading unmarked containers. He presented the photos to the sheriff's office, demanded action. Blevins took the report, assured him it would be investigated. Weeks later, photos inconclusive, vessel legitimate. Preston later discovered the vessel left the area right after he filed the report. Blevins never initiated a formal inquiry. Preston believes Blevins is compromised, actively protecting Zier. At the time, paranoia. Now, chilling credibility. The federal investigators recognize the significance. Preston's shadow investigation provides context, confirms a pattern of organized deepwater maritime activity originating from Zier. If these vessels are smuggling, they're also the mechanism for transporting evidence to the deep Gulf. The investigation shifts focus. Target, Zier Industrial Solutions. Immediate priority, corroborate Preston's findings with hard data. They also need to investigate Deputy Blevins confidentially. The shadow investigation has illuminated the path forward, pointing toward a conspiracy deeper than anyone imagined. This is where it gets dark. Armed with Preston's logs and the SOS coordinates, the task force enters a technical phase. They need to identify the vessel that transported the beacon to the deep Gulf. Primary tool, Automatic Identification System, AIS. Global Network Tracking Maritime Vessels. All large commercial vessels broadcast position, course, speed. Historical AIS data for the Gulf provides a detailed record. The investigators analyze data for hours surrounding the signal. September 10th, 2019. Looking for anomalies. Vessels exhibiting unusual behavior, deviations from shipping lanes, significant slowdowns, stops. The process takes weeks. The Gulf is busy. Several vessels in the vicinity, but one stands out. An offshore supply vessel. The Iron Current. AIS data shows the Iron Current departed from Zier Industrial Solutions early September 9th. Stated destination, offshore oil rig further west, but the data reveals a significant deviation. Early hours of September 10th, around the time of the SOS signal, the Iron Current slows dramatically, from 12 knots to near standstill. At the exact coordinates of the SOS ping, it remains there approximately 10 minutes, drifting slowly, then resumes speed, corrects course towards stated destination. The behavior is highly suspicious. No operational reason for an OSV to stop in the middle of deep ocean. The duration is consistent with disposing of an object overboard. The correlation between vessel location and ping timing is too precise. Coincidence? No chance. Investigators cross-reference the iron current with Preston's logs. The vessel appears frequently. Late-night departures. Transponder deactivated near coast. One of the vessels Preston identified as likely involved in illicit operations. The evidence suggests the iron current is their target. Next step, determine who controls it. Tracing vessel ownership is complex. Shell corporations, flags of convenience, designed to obscure true ownership. The iron current is registered in Panama, owned by a holding company in the Cayman Islands. That company owned by interlocking shell corporations, various jurisdictions, financial secrecy. Investigators spend weeks peeling back layers. Forensic accounting, international cooperation. The trail leads back to the United States. Ultimate beneficial ownership traced to interests controlled by Zier Industrial Solutions. Specifically, owner Gideon Zier. Gideon Zier, prominent figure, wealthy, politically connected, ruthless. He controls significant Gulf Coast infrastructure, wields considerable influence over local politics and law enforcement. The connection explains everything. The resistance Preston encountered, the stonewalling, Deputy Blevins' actions. The identification of the iron current solidifies the working theory. Large-scale criminal enterprise operating under cover of legitimate business using Zier infrastructure. Maritime assets like the iron current. The disposal theory is established. The iron current was used to dispose of the siblings' belongings, attempting to permanently erase evidence. The satellite beacon activation was a mistake, an error that exposed everything. The investigation has a clear target now. The iron current, its crew, the broader Zier organization. The task force begins planning the next phase. They're dealing with a sophisticated, well-resourced, dangerous adversary. They need to move carefully, gathering enough evidence to dismantle the entire organization. Operating under the assumption Zier is aware of the renewed scrutiny. As the task force probes Zier Industrial Solutions, the scope becomes clear, more than smuggling. The infrastructure, the logistics, the extreme secrecy. This suggests narcotics, human trafficking. Confidential DOJ review confirms suspicions about Deputy Blevins. Financial records reveal unexplained wealth, direct payments from Gideon Zier. Blevins actively suppressed the 2012 investigation, neutralized any inquiry pointing toward Zier. Local jurisdiction is compromised. Task force establishes secure operational base outside the area. Immediate focus, the iron current. Captain Jarek Russo identified as critical figure. 10 years as captain. Reports directly to Zier's top lieutenants. Deeply involved in illicit activities. Intimate knowledge of the organization. Responsible for evidence disposal in the Gulf. Instead of direct confrontation, the task force opts for disruption and psychological pressure. Direct action might lead to evidence destruction, activation of defenses, violence against witnesses. They need to isolate Russo, make him vulnerable, force him to see cooperation as survival. Surveillance is intense. The iron current tracked continuously via AIS and satellite. When the vessel docks, surveillance teams monitor crew activities, cargo loading, interactions with Zier representatives. The pressure campaign begins subtly, escalates quickly, relentless scrutiny from port authorities. Routine inspections become frequent and thorough. Coast Guard boards the vessel multiple times. Minor safety violations, costly delays. Customs conducts surprise audits, questioning discrepancies. These disruptions appear as heightened enforcement, but the cumulative effect is significant. The iron current misses deadlines, operations become inefficient, revenue impacted, Pressure mounts on Russo. Gideon Zier doesn't tolerate failure. Electronic surveillance intercepts communications. Zier is dissatisfied with the Iron Current's performance, furious about increased attention from authorities. The botched evidence disposal, the SOS ping, is a catastrophic liability. Zier holds Russo personally responsible. Russo feels heat from both sides, squeezed by authorities, facing his employer's wrath. Surveillance teams note changes in his behavior, agitated, paranoid, constantly checking surroundings, using burner phones, minimizing time ashore. The behavior of a man being hunted. Task force intensifies pressure, approaches junior crew members, conducts interviews, suggests they know about illicit activities, offers leniency for cooperation. This filters back to Russo, amplifies paranoia. He believes the organization is setting him up, positioning him as the fall guy. His elimination is imminent. The breaking point comes early 2020. The Iron Current docks in Galveston for scheduled maintenance. Surveillance notes Russo is unusually tense. Heated argument with a Zier representative on the dock. Visibly aggressive exchange. The representative leaves abruptly. Russo returns to vessel, face pale. That evening, Russo makes a desperate move. Believing the organization plans to silence him permanently, he panics. Abandons the Iron Current outside scheduled leave. Takes a pre-packed bag. Disappears into Galveston streets. Surveillance tracks him to a budget motel. Checks in under false name. Pays cash. The task force recognizes the signs. Fugitive preparing to flee. They need to apprehend him before he disappears, or Zier's operatives reach him. Next morning, Russo emerges. Appearance altered. Sunglasses. Baseball cap. Takes a taxi north toward George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston. The chase is on. Task force mobilizes. Coordinates with airport police and federal agents. They track the taxi along the highway. Teams in place to intercept. Tension is palpable. This is their chance to break the case. Russo arrives at International Terminal. Movements hurried, erratic. Goes directly to check in for a flight to South America. Uses sophisticated false passport. Agents observe from distance, waiting for optimal moment. Can't risk confrontation in crowded terminal. Russo clears security. Proceeds toward gate. Departure lounge crowded. Agents positioned strategically, blocking exits, blending with crowd. Boarding scheduled in 15 minutes. Boarding process begins. Russo lines up. Clutching bag. Eyes darting. Moments away from escaping U.S. jurisdiction. Lead agent gives the signal. Team converges simultaneously from multiple directions. Apprehension is swift, decisive. Russo taken down before he can react. Face pressed against terminal floor. Handcuffed. Escorted away from gate. Other passengers stare in stunned silence. Jarek Russo is in custody. Defection intercepted. The task force has the key witness to dismantle Zier and uncover the truth about Odilia and Tanner Keegan. Years of investigation, frustration, technological breakthroughs, all leading to this moment. Russo is transported to a secure federal facility. Interrogation begins immediately. He's isolated, disoriented, consumed by terror. He understands Gideon Zier's reach, the violence inflicted on betrayers. He also understands the evidence against him, AIS data, surveillance, his flight, facing life in prison or violent death. Federal prosecutors present a stark choice: cooperate fully or face the full force of federal justice. Little protection against the organization's reach within prison. Russo sees no viable option for survival, demands a deal. Entry into federal witness protection, safety in exchange for full confession and testimony. Prosecutors recognize the value, agree to terms. Over several days, Russo details the inner workings, confirms large-scale smuggling, human trafficking, and finally, the events of August 14, 2012. Russo confesses he and a specialized team were engaged in a sensitive operation that night. Zier was locked in fierce rivalry with a competing smuggling syndicate. The rival used an underwater pipeline near Zier facility to transport illicit substances. Gideon Zier ordered Russo to sabotage the pipeline, send a message of dominance, complex operation, specialized equipment, working underwater with scuba gear, underwater cutting tools, small vessel anchored in restricted canal near Zier facility, chosen for seclusion, proximity to target. They believed the area was secure, protected by their security, corrupted oversight of Blevins late at night, darkness providing cover, focused on their task, equipment noise, masking ambient sounds. They never anticipated recreational kayakers. Odelia and Tanner, exploring canals late at night, stumbled upon the operation. They saw the vessel, the lights, the activity. They became witnesses to federal crime, industrial sabotage linked to organized crime. Russo's team spotted them immediately. Reaction was swift, decisive. They couldn't risk exposure. Intercepted the kayaks, captured the siblings before they could escape or call for help, pulled from kayaks, restrained, taken back to Zier facility, held in secure warehouse. Situation escalated rapidly. Gideon Zier was informed. Arrived at facility shortly after, assessed the situation. His decision was cold, calculated, no hesitation. According to Russo, Zier viewed Tanner as immediate liability, young, aggressive, protective of his sister, likely to resist, difficult to control. Zier ordered him executed immediately. Russo reveals horrific details. Tanner taken to remote wooded area on Zier's private property inland. Murdered, buried in unmarked grave deep in dense woods, far from marshlands where search would focus. Odelia's fate was different, perhaps more horrific. Zier saw the 21-year-old woman not as liability but as asset, extensive connections with international trafficking networks. Instead of killing her, Zier ordered her sold into the sex trade. Russo states Odelia was held at facility for several days. Brutal process of subjugation. Then transferred to vessel bound for international destination. Absorbed into trafficking network. Disappearing into shadowy world of exploitation. Russo claims he doesn't know her current location or whether she's alive. Organization compartmentalized information. His role was operational. Human cargo handled by different division. With siblings dealt with, the organization covered tracks. Russo describes how they staged the scene, took the kayaks, disposed in different locations. Tanner's capsized, set adrift in main waterway, suggesting accident. Odelia's left near canal entrance. Deliberate misdirection. Knowing Blevins wouldn't pursue aggressively, cover-up was comprehensive. Corrupted logs, malfunctioning cameras, orchestrated to protect operations. Siblings' belongings, including satellite beacon, kept at facility. Locked in secure storage. 7 years, forgotten liability. Until Zier decided to eliminate remaining loose ends. Finally, Russo explains the 2019 SOS ping. Gideon Zier, feeling pressure from increased scrutiny or conducting routine cleanup, ordered Russo to dispose of belongings permanently. Russo tasked with taking items far offshore, weighting them down, dumping in deep ocean. He took the iron current to deep Gulf. AIS data corroborates vessel movements. Placed belongings in heavy canvas bag, weighted with chains. Insists beacon activation was accident. Describes aggressively handling the bag before throwing overboard. Inadvertently pressing SOS button during struggle to lift heavy bag over railing. Signal transmitted 90 seconds before bag sank into depths. Water pressure likely destroyed device or cut transmission. The confession is comprehensive. Devastating. Provides answers Preston Keegan sought for 7 years, confirming darkest fears about Zier, the corruption protecting it. But the truth is more horrific than anyone imagined. Conspiracy of murder, corruption, human trafficking, hidden behind legitimate corporate facade. Late 2020. Investigators execute search warrant on Gideon Zier's vast private property. Following Russo's directions to remote wooded area, excavation teams search for unmarked grave. After several days, they locate the site. Skeletal remains carefully unearthed. DNA analysis confirms Tanner Keegan. After 8 years, the young man's fate is definitively known. His remains can be returned to his father. Simultaneously, Task Force executes large-scale raids on Zier Industrial Solutions facilities. Massive operation. Hundreds of federal agents, tactical teams, Gideon Zier. Deputy Myron Blevins. High-ranking organization members arrested. Indicted on conspiracy, kidnapping, murder, corruption, racketeering, human trafficking. During raids, evidence of extensive criminal enterprise seized. Crucially, several trafficking victims rescued from captivity at various Zier-controlled locations. Investigation into international trafficking network continues into 2021. Task Force analyzes encrypted servers seized during raids, hoping to find any trace of Odilia. Analysis reveals horrific scope, confirms Odilia was moved internationally shortly after 2012 abduction. Digital trail indicates she was trafficked through several countries over years. Devastatingly, evidence confirms she was last known alive within network as recently as late 2020, located somewhere in Southeast Asia. For Preston Keegan, the resolution brings fractured closure. Recovery of Tanner's remains allows him to finally lay his son to rest. Dismantling of Zier organization. Arrests of those responsible. A measure of justice. But this is overshadowed by agonizing knowledge. His daughter is likely still alive, captive in horrific world of international sex trafficking. Little hope of recovery. The celebration of her mobility ended in captivity, a continuing tragedy hidden in the shadows of the world. Thanks for watching. That was the story of the signal from the deep. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more untold mysteries every week. Tell us where you're watching from. Your comments mean everything. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.